Hello, hi everyone. Welcome back to Woo Can Cook. My name is Wesley, and this is a show where we are slowly cooking our way through all of the food from my childhood. Today we're diving back into our series dedicated to classic Americanized Chinese cuisine with a shot at a stir-fry that I imagine, if you're like me, many will have heard of, but few will actually know what it really is. This, of course, is the popular Chinese takeout dish known as Hunan Chicken. For those new to the channel, in this series we have been deconstructing classic dishes from Americanized Chinese cuisine, then seeing what it might look like when reconstructed through the lens of more traditional wok cooking. Upon further research, I found that Hunan chicken is, as expected, a veggie stir-fry combined with a wok seared and fried piece of chicken, characteristically defined by a bright, tangy, and rich umami-forward sauce base. The more Americanized versions of this dish rely heavily on a classic Chinese brown sauce, which is, in other words, a soy sauce-based sauce element that has been thickened with cornstarch to create a saucy stir-fry quality. For our version today, though, we'll instead be using an approach courtesy of the walks of life that I find myself using more and more frequently with stir-fries of late, wherein we'll be aggressively reducing our sauce base rather than thickening it to create a rich and reduced sauce base that more clings to our proteins and veggies rather than coats it. This in turn creates a somewhat uniquely savory quality to our veggies and proteins without a sauce left behind to coat our rice bowl. Finally, as we dive into the mystery of what actually is a Hunan chicken, we'll also take a closer look at how it differs from its contemporaries like Sichuan chicken or Kung Pao chicken. Okay, so let's get into it. Okay, so diving right in, we're kicking things off here first with some aromatic veggies for our stir-fry. This is 4 cloves of crushed and minced garlic to start, followed by 1 inch or about 1 tablespoon of fine minced ginger and 3 green onions that we're separating by their whites and greens, then slicing into planks. Although both the whites and greens are heading into our stir-fry, remember that these leafy greens are a lot more delicate than the white portion, so we'll want to add them in at radically different times. Next up, moving on to our veggies, this is half of a medium white onion that I'm large dicing with the root end still attached to aid in achieving in a nice even dice, followed by an entire red bell pepper also large diced. I like doing this by flipping the entire thing upside down, then slicing around the core. This will essentially not only remove the entire core, but also most, if not all, of the bitter white portion inside of it as well, which we'll otherwise have to remove by hand. I'm setting all of these veggies aside for a moment so that we may dive into our chicken thigh here next. This is what ended up being 3 medium chicken thighs, also large diced, then tossed in what I would consider to be a fairly quick and simple marinade of 4 tablespoons of soy sauce here to start, followed by a single tablespoon of Shaoxing wine to aid in tenderizing, a half teaspoon of white pepper, and a whopping whole 2 tablespoons of cornstarch mixed to combine. Now, if that seems like a lot of cornstarch, it's because it is. Generally, we might add maybe a half teaspoon or so to aid in the wok sear. The thought process here today, though, is that we're attempting to add a coating of starch to our chicken, sort of like a breading, to help achieve a crispier piece of chicken. We took a similar approach to our Mongolian beef a few weeks back for those following along. Is this gonna work? Well, we'll see. Moving on to our sauce paste next. Now, there are a few key elements here that I want to focus on today for our Hunan chicken. While a Kung Pao chicken is more characteristically defined by a more sweet and savory quality coming from its use of hoisin sauce, and a Sichuan chicken is more defined by its numbing spice created by the use of Sichuan peppercorn, our Hunan chicken today is going to be richer with a focus on deep umami qualities, primarily created by our use of oyster sauce and fermented black bean. So, up first here, this is 4 tablespoons or a quarter cup of soy sauce to start, followed by 2 tablespoons of black vinegar. Then, as promised, this is a single tablespoon of oyster sauce and 2 tablespoons of fermented black bean. I like the Lao Gan Ma version of this stuff because it's fermented in chili oil, which adds a nice lingering heat to the dish, not unlike their flagship chili crisp oil. Over on the stove, I have my wok heating up here over medium heat today. Then I'm adding 4 tablespoons of peanut oil and, as always, long yao for that nice non-stick surface. Then going in here first is my chicken thigh with as much of that liquid held back as possible. Then I'm searing this for 2 minutes undisturbed so that the fat from our chicken may begin to render out. If we've done this correctly, after 2 minutes when we toss our wok, our chicken should have a nice crisped quality to it created by that cornstarch that we added to the marinade earlier. Now, I'll also caution here, I did once try this same method with a Mongolian beef, but I tossed the wok too early and we essentially tossed the cornstarch into the sauce element itself, creating a nice thick Mongolian beef jello. Yum. So be warned, make sure that that cornstarch actually sets in your sear or else it's gonna come off in your stir fry instead. In any case, moving right along, I'm shifting my chicken to one side of the wok, then bringing the heat up to high and adding my aromatic veggies to the wok surface. Here's my garlic and ginger going in for about 15 seconds until nice and fragrant before we toss this all to combine. Then going in next is my bell pepper, which I'm giving about a 1 to 2 minute head start before following up with my onion and the whites of my green onions as well. I'm tossing this all for an additional 2 to 3 minutes, just long enough for those onions to cook off a bit of their rawness, then removing from heat and bringing the fire down to low so that we may dry toast our Tianjin peppers here next. Now, I have tested out a few different approaches to blooming these peppers. If you want a spicier and more heat-forward Hunan chicken, I might recommend frying these in a tiny bit of oil to release more of its capsaicin. To step that heat up even more, you could also even break open the pods too. For my own attempt here though, I'm actually going for a more mellow heat, so I'm just gonna dry toast these briefly for their aromatics, then follow up with my sauce element next. As promised, I'm reducing this pretty aggressively. This was on heat for almost 5 minutes, not unlike how we might reduce a glaze. There is also very little sugar in this sauce though, so instead of a thick and sticky glaze forming, we're instead just left with an extremely concentrated and reduced sauce, which I'm then combining with my stir fry. Finally, here's my leafy greens of my green onions going in, then I'm tossing this all to combine and we're ready to eat. Okay, so at first glance, I will say that I do think that this looks a lot like a fairly standard stir fry. It's chicken, veggies, and sauce served over rice. But on closer look though, I actually think it's pretty unique from almost every other stir fry that we've ever done on this channel. I'm particularly a fan of the way that this sauce is reduced in the wok because of the way that it coats the chicken and veggies in our stir fry. It behaves sort of similar to how a glaze would work on a general chicken or sesame chicken, in the sense that the intense reduction causes it to really cling to the stir fry rather than drip off into the rice. The result is a more intensely flavor-packed bite because each bit of chicken and veggie is coated in our sauce. The trade-off here though is that there's no saucy rice at the bottom when you finish your bowl, which is sort of one of my favorite things to any stir-fry really. Either way, to add to this, I think the cornstarch coating to our chicken worked pretty well here too. The cornstarch crisps up in the sear, again not unlike how a breading would, yielding a uniquely crispy and crunchy piece of chicken that I would describe as something somewhere between a deep-fried chicken and a stir-fried chicken. Finally, the last bit that I'll mention is that I do think that Chinese fermented black bean is a tragically underused ingredient in most Chinese stir-fries. Since it has very little moisture in it, I actually think it's the perfect addition to a reduced sauce like this one too. Okay, so that's it everyone. I hope you enjoyed this and I hope you give this one a shot. For those who are new to the channel, this one is part of a larger series that we've been doing that's dedicated to reproducing classic Chinese American dishes, so definitely check out that series next if you haven't yet because there's a lot of these. For the Bay Area locals, the Wu Can Cook Fried Rice pop-up is at the West Oakland Farmers Market in Oakland every Sunday morning, so come by and say hi if you can. More about that at wucancook.com/eats. As always, like, comment, subscribe, share, be nice YouTubers, and I'll see you soon. Bye.